Welcome to Charter California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance. We are joined by Scott Svonkin. He is the Vice President of the Los Angeles Community College District. He's also the Chair of the Los Angeles County Commission on Insurance. So it's a perfect marriage to talk about the following subject, which is the Community College District is looking to help its students register for health care through Covered California.
Correct.
How's that?
That is exactly what we're going to do. Our goal is to offer health care to every student at every campus in the district. And so Mike Ng, my colleague who was a former assemblyman, and I co-sponsored a resolution that instructed our colleges to have covered Los Angeles Community College Week. And so we are going to, at every campus, have the opportunity for our students who are generally working, but uninsured or oftentimes have problems getting insurance, and we want to make sure they all know that they're eligible.
And let's talk about your population, because when we think about the hoped for success for Covered California and for the entire Affordable Care Act, two things need to happen. The young and healthy need to sign up.
Right.
And specifically in California, Latinos need to sign up.
Correct.
And we know that numbers for both of those populations have been low. Actually, Latino numbers I hear are getting better.
Right.
Young numbers are okay, but not where we want them to be.
Right. Well, overall, Covered California is doing a great job, and they have exceeded some of their goals. But you're correct. In our target population, the Gen Xers,
right,
the young working or young students, that's the market that they want, and we've got 250,000 of them.
You do.
Mostly minorities, mostly Latino, African American, and so we're a perfect partner.
But I would think that many of them would qualify for one of the two things. One, if they're under 26 and their parents have insurance, they can stay on their plan.
Right.
So I'm not sure if you'll be educating them on that. But two, they may be eligible for the Medicaid expansion.
Right. We're going to be educating them on every campus. We're going to have a team of people with the help of USC and the help of Covered California. We are going to be signing up students at every single campus, from the top of the San Fernando Valley all the way down to Harbor College.
Let's talk more about Latino students, because I think it's fair to say that signing up Latinos has been more challenging than I think some expected.
Right.
And it's not necessarily Spanish-dominant Latinos. It's also English-dominant Latinos. We know that part of it could be cultural, kind of a fear of giving names and IDs to a governmental entity. What are you hearing and seeing?
Well, you know, as chair of the LA County Insurance Commission, I'm hearing that parents oftentimes are afraid to sign up their children if their status is in question.
And that's also interesting, because under the Affordable Care Act, children of undocumented qualify.
As long as the child is a citizen.
Is that true? They have to be documented?
They have to be documented.
Okay.
So the documented children of non-documented parents are eligible. And so that's a harder thing to explain. It's a harder thing to explain and to sell. For our students, we believe that with the community colleges doing this, that not only will they trust us, but they'll sign up.
And I would presume that most of your students are documented. I mean,
most of them are, but we don't ask.
Right.
One of the things that makes LA Community College interesting is we don't ask.
But for Covered California, you need to ask.
Well, and that'll be part of the process signing them up.
Right.
We're not actually doing the signups.
What are you doing?
We're inviting agencies. We're inviting agencies to come to campus to set up. We're doing press conferences. We're doing public information. We're having student groups get the word out throughout the campus. We're going to have a press conference at every campus. We're going to make sure the student newspaper tells them they're eligible. They're either eligible through, as you said, their parents, because if they're under 26, but many of our students are over 26.
That's true.
Because the average age of our students is between 27 and 29.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. And the vast majority of our students are minority.
Yes.
And we're a minority majority organization. And so we're very proud of the fact that we're helping not only our students, but we're helping California get healthier through Covered Los Angeles Community College Week.
Okay, well, good luck on that. I want to shift gears, if I may, and speak with you about newfound money. Who would have thunk, if we were talking 2 years ago, that the Community College District would have more money coming in than expected? But aside from Prop 30, aside from a better economy, I guess now it's property taxes.
Yes, thank goodness people are paying their property taxes, and the county was expecting a $1 amount, and we're getting $17 million more in property taxes from the state of California, and that is going to allow us to offer more classes. Specifically, I'm going to propose that we offer summer school at every campus. We have, for the last 5 years, cut classes and reduced programs. This year, for the first time, thanks to the voters of California and the voters of Los Angeles, we're offering more classes. But even now, with this found money, $17 million in additional revenue in property tax, our hope is that we offer summer school at every campus.
Let's talk about summer school, because there's no doubt that for a time, summer school was pivotal for the community college student looking to matriculate out to a 4-year, because classes became so impacted that the only way they could get a certain class would be over the summer. Well, the perfect storm was then summer classes started getting eliminated. And so how invaluable is this tool?
Well, I think it's going to be the difference between students taking 3 years and getting to university faster. I believe that this is probably the most important thing that we'll do this year is open up the classes that we've cut over the last 5 years.
How are you, so that begs the question, how are you going to decide what class to offer? Is it just look at your impact list?
It's two things. One is we look at what are the classes that our students need first, and second is do we have faculty to teach it? And our hope is that since we reduced the number of classes over the last 5 years, they're eager to teach, because the adjuncts and the full-time faculty have been hurt by the downturn in the economy, because if they don't teach, they can't make their pay.
I must ask though, while the economy is turning around and while Prop 30 has helped, I think it's fair to say that the governor is most preferential to K-12.
He has, a long history with the community colleges, and he started his career on the LA Community College Board.
Not your seat. We figured it out.
Whose seat? Mike Ing's.
Mike Ing's seat. Okay.
Yeah. I think that he believes, as do I from the studies, is if a student is successful in their K through 12 experience, they'll be successful at college. So it's important to make sure that we get our students successful. Most of our students come to us and they're not prepared for English or math.
I hear you on that. But when we were growing up in the ancient days of the 20th century, the kids that went to community college, including yourself, if I may say, had some challenges.
Right.
Had some challenges, and that's why they went to community college. That's not the way it is anymore. There are plenty of very bright kids that go to community college because of a variety of reasons, including expenses, including it's a path that people take. And so I wonder if that thinking is still wise. I mean, community college success is now critical to get to that 4-year.
I think it's really important to understand that there are two groups that we want. One, those like myself who were high school dropouts who need a second chance. That's a big part of who we serve. The other thing is that we serve people who can't afford to go to a USC or a UCLA or even a Cal State. And so our doors are open for everybody. And one of the challenges has been over the last 5 years is with reducing classes, we had less seats. Today, our doors are open. We're open for business, and we welcome at the LA Community Colleges, whether it's in the San Fernando Valley or the South Bay, we're open for business and we're ready to serve. Speaking
of, I can't remember if I've spoken about this with you, there is a move afoot now to look at 4-year degrees at community colleges. Whether we talked about it or not, let's talk about it now. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think in specialty areas, I think it's an important opportunity for us. I don't think we should offer degrees in everything, but I do think nursing, things we do and that we do well, nursing, trades, automotive, in computer science, things that the community colleges can do and that are impacted at the 4-year universities and they can't do, we should do.
I got to say, over 20 states have adopted this model in some form. It seems like we're behind the curve. Why wouldn't we do this?
I can't think of a good reason not to offer degrees in specific areas where there's a need. I don't think we should become 4-year schools.
I understand.
But I do believe that the community colleges, especially in Los Angeles, should fill that void. In addition, some of the rural communities.
Okay, his name is Scott Svonkin. He is on the Los Angeles Community College District. I'm Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back on Charter California Edition.
What percentage of California's nurses is educated at California community colleges? 25, 45, 60, or 70%? 70% of California's nurses receive their education at a California community college.
Welcome back. It's Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We are joined by Janet Chin. She's a member of the school board at the Garvey School District, which is centered in Rosemead. That takes in some other communities. But I want to speak with you about the new way that schools are seeing funding come down from Sacramento. It's known as the local control funding formula. We've talked about it before. But what's unique about this formula is that the school districts are required to speak with parents and stakeholders about how they want state funds to be spent. They're called LCAPs, Local Control Advisory.
Accountability Plan.
Thank you. And so talk to us about the LCAP meetings that are happening in Garvey as an example of any LCAP.
Well, thank you so much for bringing
Please.
up that topic. LCAPs are really important at the moment because they have to be aligned with our school site plans.
Which means?
Which means that every year we get a thick binder
Right.
that tells us that every school site has their own list of priorities.
I see.
And it's aligned obviously to the district, aligned to the county,
Right.
aligned to the state. So the LCAP, the portion of the LCAP that's really interesting is that it's requiring a lot more stakeholders to come in and help us prioritize.
Right.
So there's a lot of education that has to happen with the parents for
Right.
the parent empowerment piece.
Right. So, but what's unique about the LCAP is while you're educating parents, you yourself are being educated because this is a whole new formula. I mean, school districts now don't see funding through those categoricals that we've talked about, but we see funding through a variety of ways, including whether you're educating children that may be disadvantaged, either because they're foster kids, economically disadvantaged, or English language learners. And in a school district like Garvey, you have such a large percentage in that category that you get a double bump. You get not only a bump per kid, but a 50% bump overall because you hit that threshold of 55% and more.
Yes.
So, wow.
Well, that training in tandem is really important. I think it requires the ability to understand, obviously, the most neediest of
Right.
our community. Our English language students, foster kids, special
Right.
ed kids, obviously, it does give us a bump, like you mentioned.
Right.
We go somewhere between, the difference is, as of right now, per ADA, it's about 6,500 with the formula difference
Right.
to fill in the gap. But when it actually hits, we actually do really well. We're closer to about 9,500.
That's huge.
It's huge.
That is a huge
But we
difference.
are a district that's, has that high percentage.
But here's the question. Does that extra money have to be spent on kids in those categories? That's the challenge. And how does one define whether the money has been spent on kids in those categories?
And that's the important part of the aligning the actual priorities with our plan in order to stay accountable.
Right.
The important part, too, for us is that we need to make sure that our parents are understanding
Right.
the intricacies of how schools are financed. Before
Right.
categorical, monies can't be mixed, things like that.
Right.
Just the basic understanding. And then from there, keeping that open line of communication with them so that they're continuing to give us the insights.
I know you've started your LCAP meetings. What are the reports that are coming out of them? What are parents, what are stakeholders saying at these meetings?
Well, the difference for them to understand is that there's the actual operations and then the things that they would hope, all their hopes and dreams, right?
Okay.
The field trips and more books in the library
Right.
per kid. I think the average is supposed to be about 18 books per
Okay.
child. And making sure that we have librarians and,
Right.
there are little things that they feel has a direct impact on their own child.
But if you also consider that there are different ways that you can bolster those children that may be from these targeted categories. It could be after school programs. I spoke with one school board member from Pasadena who said there was a big interest in summer school as a way to try to bolster some of these disadvantaged children. I mean, that's a loaded term, but you know what I'm getting at.
Yes.
So you mentioned librarians, which I understand. What else are you hearing?
We're also hearing language classes. They want to make sure that those are in place. Spanish and Mandarin classes are available.
As part of dual immersion?
No, not necessarily as a continuing of something that we had started a couple of years ago. So there's some fear of losing some
Sure.
programs.
It's interesting you say that because I heard this morning on the radio that there is a proposal by, I believe it's State Senator Ricardo Lara, which would allow bilingual education to come back. Because as you know, the voters passed in 1998 a ban on bona fide bilingual education. And what his proposal says is that you can teach in native language, getting them up to speed in English, but right now that's not allowed. You know that.
And you know, it's funny because in college that was one of my biggest debates was on
Tell me.
bilingual education. But the so
Well, let's talk about that if you don't mind, because there's no question that studies come out in different areas, in different ways. You know, some would say math is math is math. It doesn't matter what language you learn it in. The concepts are there.
Right.
And that same study may say, and if the child learns it in the native language, the language in which they are most comfortable, the concepts will come easier and it can transfer later. But if they're struggling with the language, you're not serving them well.
Yeah,
Is that what you learned in college?
And that is what I learned in college.
Right.
And that is what we're doing now, right? Bringing back bilingual education is something, I think it's definitely in a different context now, right? We're really talking about making sure that the kids are bilingual.
Truly bilingual, right.
And then being able to get them to be redesignated out of those English language programs is kind of the focus right now.
But what's interesting is if you designate them out of the English language learner program, you could fall below that cap of 55% and you won't get that extra 20% bump. Is it 20%? Yeah, extra 20% bump per child. So the incentives can be perverse at a certain level.
Good.
Well stated, well stated.
Yeah.
In the background, Janet, we see Common Core, which is yet another revolution in education.
Yes.
And as you're, it's funny, I don't know if this is completely accurate, but as you're decentralizing vis-a-vis Sacramento, one could argue you're re-centralizing vis-a-vis Common Core because you're creating standards that are more nationwide. Is that fair?
I think so, in some ways. I mean,
Right.
that discussion continues. And again, if we go back to talking directly to parents about how they feel, the first thing that, you know, even our teachers will tell you is try taking the test. Go online.
The
Go
Common Core test?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Take a Common Core test at maybe 5th grade and see if you pass or not. And the biggest complaint that some of the parents and the teachers have is that you really need to be a computer whiz in order to be able to navigate it. And that's the first part, right?
Now, some kids are,
Which-
more than us, more than the adults,
Right.
but extremely well stated.
Right, and which then doesn't really correlate with the conversation about, you know, being bilingual or using language to teach technology. You know, it's just there.
So what's the answer? Because, you know, this year, as I understand it, we will, in California, use the Common Core test, not the No Child Left Behind test. The scores may or may not be reported, probably not reported.
Right.
But which I understand, but then how do we know if the kids are performing or if they're falling behind?
Well, you're not going to be able to use that data initially because it's just a transition period.
But will you even see the data? Is that unclear?
Yeah, that is unclear. That is unclear whether or not we're going to be able to. I mean, if we're not going to be able to see it, we're not going to be able to use it. Whether or not it's accurate, it's not even. It's subjective.
It's just so different than what we're used to. When we think about the No Child Left Behind testing, the California State Standards test, the SAT, the ACT, it's so drill and kill. It's so No Child Left Behind. And Common Core is just so opposite of that. It's adaptive. It's you actually fill in blanks. This is really going to change the way we teach our kids. And how do we do that for a kid that maybe is in 7th and 8th grade?
Well,
you know, who's kind of learned one way and now.
We've talked about this prior, and this is about the support system, right? And going back to what you were talking about after school programs, how do we get these kids to, you know, get ahead? How do we get them? It's an ongoing discussion.
When we come back, we're going to speak with one of your colleagues, sort of. She is a school board member in West Covina. My name is Brad Pomerance. You are watching Charter California Edition.
What percentage of students in California are English language learners? 16, 25, 31, or 36%? According to the PPIC, nearly 25% of California students are English language learners.
Welcome back. It's Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We are joined by Eileen Jimenez. She is on the West Covina School Board. She is the clerk right now. She has been president in the past. And I want to speak with you about an exciting development in education, and that is the empowerment of parents and stakeholders in funding decisions. As we know, we have something called the local control funding formula, changes the way we send money from Sacramento to school districts. But through that formula, you are required to seek input from parents and stakeholders. It's called the LCAP. Tell us about it.
Oh, it's exciting. This is a really exciting time in education right now. People may not know that. Not in addition to the LCAP and the LCFF, I'm sorry, we throw away those, those
LCAP is
acronyms.
Local Control Accountability Plan.
Right, and then the local control funding formula. We also have Common Core.
Oh, we'll talk about that in a second.
It's a very exciting time.
Let's focus on the LCAP first.
So it's a really exciting time for education in general. With the LCAP, what's really good about this, and this is, I appreciate the expertise of those in Sacramento who decided to put this together, is that we need to get feedback from our stakeholders, parents, and from subgroups that may not been represented before at the table.
Such as?
Such as, for example, if you have a population of Filipinos, you need to have some parents that are from the Filipino community in Tagalog to make sure that their voice is heard. Or if you have a community of Russian students who speak Russian, so you have to include all these foster children has not been at the forefront of education funding
targeted categories.
Exactly. So you need to have some foster advocates or foster parents sitting at the table formulating and shaping the LCAP.
So what are you hearing? What are the stakeholders telling you? How do they want this extra money spent? Because in the end, is West Covina getting a concentration grant? Do you have that over?
No, we are not getting a concentration
But you're still
grant.
getting an additional 20% per child that's either foster, economically disadvantaged, or an ESL student.
Correct. And let's just say at this time, that may change.
Right.
We have an open district. We are a district of choice. So at a later date, we may start getting those concentrated grants, but at this time, no. I'm hearing great things from the community. They're very excited about the meetings that are going to take place, and we're doing it a little. All districts can do it how they see fit. What we're doing is we're doing a large general meeting in which we're asking at least 100 stakeholders to attend. Wow. And then from there, we are going to funnel that down. We also have a smaller, what we're calling a sub-LCAP committee, that a group of, I believe it's 25, that are going to be working very closely on this.
Have you heard what people's hopes, fears, and dreams are so far? I mean, people must be chatting about what they would like to see happen. Have they started chatting to you? What
I've been hearing is the excitement around mental health. That because the foster care system is now being looked at, and foster youth, that it's going to put a better emphasis on mental health in our school system.
And you can spend money on that now because you don't have those categoricals that have strings directly attached.
Yes.
And so what about, though, do you have, when you think about English language learners, most often one thinks about those that may be Spanish dominant. Right. But in many different areas of our region and throughout the state, there may be other dominant languages. Do you have a large Tagalog community?
We do. We have a very growing Filipino community in West Covina. We do have a small segment of Chinese and Japanese, but it's really the Filipino community. Down over in our West Covina area, which is really the northernmost part of Roland, the southernmost part of West Covina Unified, we have a very growing Filipino community. So I'm so excited that they are going to have a seat at the table.
And what are they saying?
That they're very pleased to be included.
I understand.
Because again, as you said, given the San Gabriel Valley's demographics, Spanish language parents, and that tends to be at the forefront. But now it really feels like everyone is taking a seat at the table and everyone has a voice.
You mentioned Common Core, and that's another big, as I've said before, revolution in the background. Because while Sacramento is devolving power to local districts, one could argue that there's some roll-up of power, kind of sort of with Common Core, in that there are common standards nationwide in at least 45 states. How do you feel about Common Core?
I'm very excited about Common Core. And what I'm hearing from teachers, especially teachers that have been teaching 20 plus years, is they feel like now we're going back to the way things used to be when we could be much more inclusive and multidisciplinary in our classrooms. So they feel like we're not teaching to the test.
But when you think about Common Core versus No Child Left Behind, which was the prior model, with No Child Left Behind, you would see schools educating students. They would give a little information about a lot of subjects, whereas under Common Core, you're giving a lot of information about fewer subjects. So you're going a little deeper. I said that correctly?
You sure did say that correctly. It's a very multidisciplinary, multi-pronged approach, which is great, which is the way we do learn. You can't take a subject and say, well, I'm only going to learn this about it, because you can pull math in.
Right.
You can pull social studies in. You can pull the sciences in. And now you have that ability.
I guess what I'm asking is, and again, I'm not commenting one way or the other, but is it better to know more about one subject or less, but have a broader understanding of more subjects? You see what I'm saying?
Yes. Well, let's take a look at the things that we love, like our hobbies, for example. We know a lot about our hobbies, which gives us expertise.
Right.
So the same is going to happen for our students, where they're going to be able to see, this is how whatever it is I'm studying matches to math or to English or to history.
And you're not concerned we'll lose that kind of survey approach?
No, because students felt very overwhelmed and teachers felt like they were only teaching to the test. And they felt that they weren't being multidisciplinary, and now they can. And the other thing that I hear from teachers is that they're very excited that they're not in this alone. This isn't just California regulating this.
True.
This is nationwide. So they feel like all together we're going to go through this process, and they feel less alienated. So I'm very excited. It's an exciting time in education here in California.
You talk about the test. The test is changing.
Yes, it is.
The test is changing in a very significant way.
Many ways.
Yes, we're not going to see that kind of drill and kill, multiple choice. What we're going to see is more adaptive testing, which is if you get one answer correct, you'll get a harder question. If you get another answer wrong, you'll get an easier question. What do you think about that approach?
Well, I have some concerns, and let's see if they get addressed. I'm glad that we're going to be using technology. I'm glad that students are going to be able to be on computers taking these tests. I'm glad that it'll be able to shift based on a student's responses. What I'm concerned about, though, and we've all been there with different subjects, you may not do so well in this 101 state of a subject, but when you get into that deeper learning, you may do great. A lot of my friends say that they have that problem with math. Maybe they don't get the division and the percentages right, but boy, can they do that higher order thinking. And so I'm concerned that kids are going to get shut out right here. And we're not going to measure that they actually have depth knowledge. So they say they're working on that, and I'm excited to see what they're going to do. But that is my concern. Other than that, I'm really excited about the rollout.
I heard a student talk about a standardized test they took, and this was an advanced math student. And that student had basically forgotten basic math, and so didn't do well because basic math was being tested. They were so advanced, they learned, you know, the pre-algebra in 6th or 7th grade.
Right, they're probably taking the Casey.
It could be, yeah.
Because the Casey is measuring that basic level of math and English to see, can we give you the diploma? And if you're up in calculus,
you'll forget all of that.
Exactly.
At the same time, you mentioned technology. Are our children ready to take tests? I mean, they're probably more ready than I am on the iPads, but be that as it
who
may.
are you asking?
Right,
The
but
kids.
honestly, though, I mean, are they ready?
The kids are ready.
Are the teachers ready?
The teachers of the school districts are not. Many school districts don't have the infrastructure. They have to figure out, our district included, how do you get the entire district to be testing at once? How do you not have the server crash?
I don't know.
How
I mean,
do you?
You're not going to have enough iPads, are you?
No, and actually, we're not going to test on iPads
What are you
either.
gonna do?
So we're looking more at laptops so
I
that they
see.
can be used through the classroom, and it's a much more stable
But
environment.
at the same time?
And then that's what we have to figure out.
It's impossible.
We have
Unless
this,
you have
right.
countless money for computers.
We have this spring to do a dry run.
Okay.
As you very well know, none of the scores are going to count for
Right.
this spring, but it's going to give the schools the ability to say, well, can we test a group in the morning? Can we test another one in the afternoon?
Okay.
How can we start to stagger this so we don't create a problem for the
I want to
district?
thank you for joining us. She is Eileen Miranda Jimenez from the West Covina School Board. I'm Brad Pomerance. It's Charter California Edition.